Hi guys, it's JazzyCloo, and I'm here today with something a bit different. This is going to be a continuous thing, and I will be doing this often. So, if you like what I'm about to do, I'm going to be explaining 6 real serial killers stories, basically. I don't think all of them are told by the serial killers themselves, but they're explained in the article and they are hopefully all true. I don't know exactly because I don't have statistic facts that they are true, but they seem pretty true and they're entertaining to listen to, so that can be good as well. I'm going to provide an email in the description, and you guys can contact that email with any stories that you would like to share, and you will receive credit from any stories that you share with me. They do have rules, though. They have to be real, and you have to explain in the subject what kind of story is it going to be. Is it going to be a horror story, a funny story, anything like that? So I'm going to start. Here we go. Story number 1. This story is about a woman named Katherine Night, where she cooked her husband and tried to feed him to his children. Katherine Night had a well-documented history of clownfuck lunacy, beginning when she tried to strangle her first husband to death on their wedding night for daring to only have sex with her 3 times before falling asleep. When he finally left her, Night took their infant daughter and dropped her on a stretch of nearby train tracks. The baby was rescued by a hobo, then rampaged through town, threatening random strangers with an axe. She later went on another rampage, slashing a woman's face and forcing her to drive to a service station, where Knight took a little boy hostage until the police arrived and beat her into submission with brooms, before law enforcement in Australia is apparently hilarious. None of this is the crazy part of her story. Here is when it went detouring. Knight eventually met a father of 3 named John Price, and they moved in together, despite the fact that Price was well aware of her explosive fits for an inexpressible, slobbering Looney Tunes rage. Price wound up kicking her out and filed a restraining order against her, telling his co-workers that if he ever failed to show up for work, she had probably killed him. He then gallantly allowed Knight back into his house for sex and fall asleep beside her, which suggests that Price perhaps didn't completely understand how restraining orders are supposed to work. Sorry, that was worded weirdly. Knight underscored his error by stabbing Price 37 times. When Price didn't show up for work the next day, his co-workers called the police, who showed up at Price's house to discover his skinned, headless body lying on the living room floor. Knight had draped his skin, completely intact in a single piece, over an S-hook in a doorway like a Vanity curtain in Leatherface's house. Price's head was boiling in a pot on the stove, and pieces of his butt had been pan-fried with vegetables and gravy and plated up on the table in 2-place setting with the name tags indicating they were meant for Price's adult children, although the kids weren't expected, so she probably would have covered the plates with tinfoil. Knight pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Her file literally bears the words "never to be released," like a fucking supervillain in the subterranean vault. Number 5. This story is about Russell Williams burgled woman's underwear and videotaped his murders. Alrighty. Russell Williams, a decorated colonel in the Canadian Armed Forces, liked to break into the homes of friends and neighbors with underage daughters and then photograph himself wearing the girls' underwear and masturbating all over their rooms like a laboratory monkey, trying to get the most out of his jailbreak spree before the PCP injections catch him up to help and melt his brain. He even creepily typed a message on one 12-year-old girl's computer, thanking her for the evening of boner flogging her bedroom had provided her. For him. All told, Williams committed over 80 underwear burglaries, frequently breaking into the underwear owners frequently breaking in while the underwear owners were at home. He once sprinted naked into a woman's house to ransack her unmentionables drawers while she was in the shower. And he kept a meticulously organized library of thousands of photographs like these hidden in the basement of this house. Let me show you. Attractive, right? Oh dear. That was when Williams decided to open up the throttle on his crazy and graduate to full-blown kidnapping and murder. He broke into the houses of 2 different women, tying them up and forcing them to pose for more photographs for his collection. Then Williams broke into the house of a corporal he recognized from work, beat her into submission with a flashlight, and brutally murdered her, videotaping every horrific moment of his crime and taking enough photographs to fill an album. He also stole huge amounts of her clothing and underwear because, as we've established, underwear was his maniac catnip. Finally, Williams kidnapped a woman and took her out to a cottage he owned, where he terrorized her for an entire day before ultimately killing her with the same flashlight, because apparently he believed flashlight meant bulge-on that occasionally helps you see in the dark. He recorded 4 hours of video of the crime and collected several more photographs and articles of stolen clothing, strengthening his bid for the title of Scariest Canadian in History, although he's facing stout competition in this very article. Luckily, a witness had spotted Williams' Pathfinder outside of his last victim's house just before she appeared, and police were able to arrest him after matching his tire and boot prints to those found at the scene of her abduction. He confessed to the murders and was sentenced to life in prison, where he recently tried to kill himself by swallowing a toilet paper roll. The Canadian forces stripped Williams of his rank and ceremonially burned his uniform and every medal he'd earned over 23 years of service, because fuck that guy, am I right? Here we go with number 4. A millionaire pig farmer killed people and fed them to his pigs. Robert Picton, a millionaire pig farmer in British Columbia, murdered anywhere between 6 and 50. That's a very big number. 6 and 50 prostitutes from the Vancouver area, cut up their bodies and fed them to his pigs. And once again, that statement is actually the least insane part of the story. Picton would cruise around the seediest areas of Vancouver, luring hookers back to his sprawling pig farm. Any invitation that includes the phrase, "Come back to my pig farm where I butcher pigs," should be immediately refused. With the promise of money and drugs, where he brutally murdered them and dismembered their body for creative disposal. Picton didn't just feed the bodies of the pigs, though. He kept the head, hands, and feet of some of his victims bundled up in refrigerators around the farm. He munched some of his victims in a wood chipper, and investigators are almost 100% certain that he lumped women remains together with unusable pig parts like intestines, blood, and bones, and took them up to a rendering plant in Vancouver to be processed into things like lipstick, shampoo, and soap, which reveals 2 horrible truths about the cosmetics industry. The point is, Picton didn't believe in simply disposing of the bodies. He liked to spread his evil around like a murderous Johnny Appleseed. Meanwhile, the Vancouver Police Department simply didn't give a shit about the disappearing woman. They reasoned that all women were drug addicts and had either wandered off to other cities or died anonymously of overdoses. They literally fired an investigator for having the gall to suggest that a serial killer might be responsible. One of Picton's victims actually managed to escape the pig farm, bleeding from multiple stab wounds, and prosecutors dismissed the subsequent attempted murder charges against him because the most important descriptor of Robert Picton at the time was millionaire. Picton was eventually brought to justice when an employee came forward with damning testimony that led to a full-scale investigation, and he received a life sentence. Meanwhile, Canadian officials did their part to calm a community repulsed by both the killings and the notion that they might have consumed pork fattened on human remains, by assuring them that pork is typically well cooked, thereby eliminating the chance of catching any diseases from the murdered prostitutes and confirming that authority figures in British Columbia are terrible at crisis counseling. Number 3. Magdalena Solis cut people's hearts out for the sake of an elaborate scam. I'm just going to cut her name into Mag for now because it's kind of difficult to pronounce and I don't want to be stumbling everywhere. Alright, here we go. Mag Solis was part of an elaborate scam involving two grifters, the Hernandez Brothers, who were biking the small farming village of Yerba Buena, Mexico. That sounds pretty tame compared to the other stuff on this list, but let's just say that there are some things to point out got a bit out of hand. In 1962, the brothers had shown up and claimed that they were Incan priests who had a wealth of Incan gold the gods wished to share with the village, but the only way to appease the gods was to bring regular offerings of money and cleanse their bodies of demons. And the only way to cleanse their bodies of demons was to have sex with the Hernandez brothers. Like, all the time. The villagers weren't terribly bright. For instance, the Incans were in Peru, not Mexico. But after a while, they did grow tired of having sex with the Hernandez brothers with absolutely no sign of their promised bounty of gold. So the brothers required a prostitute named Mag to pose as a reincarnated Incan goddess and explicitly fluent in 20th century Spanish. They revealed Mag to the villagers in a puff of smoke during one of their cave rituals, and Mag immediately fell perfectly into character by demanding that everyone have sex with everyone else and drink from goblets of chicken blood garnished with marijuana leaves. When the villagers inevitably got bored of Mag, still wondering where in the blue hell their gold was, she responded by ordering two of her doubters stoned to death in the ritual cave, and at this point it went from a cheap sex and money for promises of gold scam to something else entirely. The victim's blood was gathered in the ceremonial ganja goblets and consumed, and thus Solis and the Hernandez brothers had discovered a bulletproof way of perpetrating their scam. Kill a villager or two every so often as a blood sacrifice, and the others will be too terrified to voice any doubts. Who knows how long the scam might have continued had a random teenage boy not walked on by the cave on his way to school and spotted Solis and her absurdly desperate followers, bashing one woman's face in with rocks and chopping another man's heart out with machetes. The boy ran like hell to the nearest police station, and a patrolman followed him back to the village to check it out, because he hadn't apparently seen enough horror movies to know what happens to cops when they go investigate strange murder cases by themselves. When the officer didn't return, the police started to posse up and rolled into the village to discover his body hacked to pieces and his heart removed. The boy had also been killed in the same horrifying Temple of Doom fashion. They cornered Mag's cult in the ritual cave and arrested most of them, although the Hernandez brothers were killed in the ensuing shootout. Solis and her surviving followers were tossed in the state prison for 30 years. The Incas remained in Peru, where they had been the entire time. Number 2. This situation is the giggling granny poisoned her entire family. Woo! Nanny Doss had a thing for arsenic, and with it, she poisoned the little titty shits out of every single member of her family, before delivering ineffable, chuckling confessions to the police, earning her the nickname the Giggling Granny. By the time she was finally caught, she'd killed her mother, 2 sisters, 2 daughters, a nephew, a grandson, and 4 husbands, for motives best described as no goddamn reason whatsoever. And what is really chilling about the story is how her murder spree continued before anybody caught on, although her first husband, Charlie, did grow suspicious after their 2 middle daughters mysteriously died of food poisoning. Because it literally used to be that easy to murder people. Charlie ran off, taking their eldest daughter with him, but leaving the youngest behind with Doss because apparently he didn't like that child. Poor child. Nanny Doss stayed married to her second husband, Frank, for 16 years, during which time she probably killed her newborn grandson by stabbing him through the skull with a hat pin and definitely killed her older grandson with a generous dose of poison. Frank, for this part, was an abusive drunk, and Doss eventually got sick of him and dunked rat poison into his whiskey, which is a recognized but generally frowned upon cure for assholes. Doss got married 3 more times, and each husband wound up dying mysteriously. She even killed her third husband's mother, just after poisoning him and burning their houses to the ground to keep it from going in his family. In between her fourth and fifth marriages, she moved in with her cancer-stricken sister and poisoned her too, because why the hell not? Might as well kill my own mother while I'm at it, she presumably thought, before doing exactly that. At this point, the authorities must have assured that Nanny Doss was shrouded in some ancient mummy curse, because the only other explanation is that they're all terrible at their jobs. Doss finally got caught when she poisoned her fifth husband badly enough to send him to the hospital for 3 weeks, but not enough to kill him. The day he was sent home, Doss filled him with enough arsenic to kill 20 freaking people. Finally, one of the doctors came suspicious of Doss and ordered an autopsy. An autopsy? I don't know. Autopsy, which confirmed that her husband had been poisoned. Police confronted Doss, and she immediately confessed, laughing throughout the entire interview, with gleefully admitting to murdering 11 members of her family. Doss kept right on smiling as she boarded the bus to prison to serve out her life sentence, commenting to a reporter as she left that she didn't feel bad about the outcome. Life magazine even asked her permission to publish her life story because they apparently forgot she had murdered children in addition to drunken ass-lord husbands. Number 1. This situation is Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, I can't pronounce that, murdered people for black magic. Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo was a former apprentice to a Haitian priest who blossomed into a master-level crazy mage, armed with the legitimate belief that he had the power to see the future and cast powerful spells, provided he kept his black magic cauldron well stocked with his superficial human body parts. He had a cult of devoted followers to fulfill his task for him by kidnapping, mostly, random people and torturing them to death to appease Kadiempi, a devil-like figure and the bestower of his magical gifts. We assume the same demon was responsible for granting him this handsomest Emilio Estevez mullet in recorded history. Yeah, that's not how you're picturing him, was it? Let me show you. I mean, he's pretty hot. Look. Constanza was a warlock for hire, selling his spells and clairvoyance abilities to drug dealers and law enforcement officials alike in Mexico. He stewed human brains, blood, bones, and guts in his cauldron alongside scorpions, spiders, and other witchcrafty totems to create spells to make his clients invisible to police detection and invulnerable to gunfire. Even the drug dealers were afraid of Constanzo when one cartel refused to make him a full partner after they'd enjoy so much success with his spells. 7 of their members mysteriously disappeared, turning up several days later floating in a river with fingers, ears, hearts, brains, and freaking spines removed like they'd been attacked by the goddamn predator. Constanzo had a handful of other rival drug traffickers fed to his cauldron, and even had a member of his own cult hacked into dark wizard porridge to set an example for the rest of the team. The example being, we should probably find other jobs. The heat didn't really come down on Constanzo until his group kidnapped and mutilated an American college student, at which point the U.S. government put intense pressure on Mexican officials to solve the crime. Police followed a member of Constanzo's cult to his terrifying ritualistic murder ranch after the man blew through a checkpoint and they found remains of 15 people buried along the property. The missing student's brain was discovered floating in a position in Constanzo's cauldron, presumably waiting to be graded by Professor Snape. Constanzo's gang was hunted down and arrested, and Constanzo himself was finally concerned in an apartment surrounded by 180 police officers because magic probably isn't real, but we aren't taking any fucking chances. Rather than allow himself to be captured, Constanzo instructed one of his henchmen to shoot him. The police discovered the evil wizard's body riddled with bullets because apparently the henchman wasn't taking any chances either. And that is that. Sorry for the stuttering, guys. My throat's a bit messed up, but I really wanted to read these. And sometimes I stutter when I read a big word and then I stutter the rest of the way through. I'm trying to get better at it though, don't worry. So like I said, I'm going to provide an email in the description, and I want you guys to email that email address and tell me any stories that you guys want to be told on here, and in the subject, what type of story is it? Funny? Horrifying? You got kidnapped? Or you did get kidnapped and you escaped, or you were almost kidnapped, you were the murderer, you were the stalker. Any of these stories are confidential, and if you don't want me to tell the people who you are, include that. Just put anonymous. None of this is going anywhere besides me because I love stories, okay? And that is that. I will include credit if you want, just let me know. If you don't include that you want credit, then I won't put any credit, but I will say they're not mine, just to not, confuse anyone. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment, like, and subscribe for any more, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.